You know that feeling, right? That knot in your stomach, the racing heart. We all know what fear feels like, but have you ever really stopped to ask, where does it come from? Today, we're going on a hunt for the predator that stalks us. And what we're going to find is that over millions of years, it's evolved from a beast with claws and fangs into something that lives inside our own heads. So let's start at the very, very beginning. What was our oldest fear? For most of human history, the answer was pretty simple. It was the sound of a twig snapping in the dark. It was a shadow moving in the tall grass. It was something real, something that could hunt you, kill you, and eat you. The threat wasn't in your head. It was right there, outside, and it was absolutely everywhere. So here's the journey we're going to take. We'll start with the external leopard out on the ancient savanna. Then we'll look at the two faces of community, how it can either save you or, well, eat you. We'll see how we built a new internal leopard in the modern world. Watch as that very system starts to eat itself. And finally, ask the big question. What actually happens when we stop running? All right, let's travel back in time. We're talking 3.5 million years ago on the African savanna. Picture our ancestor, Lucy. For her, fear wasn't an abstract thing. It wasn't anxiety about a deadline or being awkward at a party. No, it was the constant gut-level threat of being hunted. That was just the texture of everyday life. And look, this isn't just some theory. We have the bones to prove it. Archaeologists have found a paranthropus skull with two perfect puncture marks that are an exact match for a leopard's canines. Chilling. They found the bones of our ancestors near water, just covered in the teeth marks of crocodiles, and maybe most tragically, the skull of a 3-year-old child with these telltale scratches inside its eye sockets, the work of a massive, terrifying eagle. This was the world we were born into. This was the original leopard. Okay, so as we evolved, we got really, really good at surviving those external predators. But that success gave rise to a brand new threat, other humans. Community became our greatest weapon, but man, it was a double-edged sword. It could be our salvation, or it could be our absolute doom. To see what I mean, let's go to a place called Herxheim in Germany. About 7,000 years ago, it probably looks like any other farming village. But when archaeologists started digging there, they uncovered something deeply unsettling. In a series of massive pits, they found the remains of over 500 people, and they've only dug up half the site. The bones at Herxheim tell a horrifyingly clear story. These people were systematically butchered, and they were eaten, a ritual of mass cannibalism. But here is the wild paradox of being human. Around the same time, one community was literally consuming its neighbors. Another was doing the exact opposite. They were taking care of a severely disabled Neanderthal we call Shanidar 1, or Nandy. Nandy's injuries were just catastrophic. I mean, a withered arm, maybe even amputated. He was blind in one eye, partially deaf, and walked with a crippling limp. He couldn't have survived a single week on his own, and yet he lived to be about 40 years old. This is just profound evidence of compassion. His community made a choice to care for him. So you see, right there, you have the two faces of humanity that have always been with us. The community that eats you and the community that saves you. So how does that ancient tension play out today? Well, in the modern world, the predator has changed its hunting grounds again. It's no longer a leopard on the savanna or a rival tribe. The threat has moved inside. We actually built the leopard in our own minds. You can kind of see this shift starting with the experience of Generation X, the latchkey kids, right? They came home to empty houses, learning from a super young age that instability was just normal and that no one was coming to rescue you, so they adapted. They developed this radical self-reliance, almost treating competence like a suit of armor against a world that just felt fundamentally shaky. And that self-reliance was a perfect response to a changing world, a world that the philosopher Byung-Chul Han analyzed brilliantly. He says that power itself has changed. Old power was restrictive. It told you what you should not do. Think of a castle wall or a list of rules. But new power, it's expansive. It doesn't say no, it says yes. It tells you that you can be anything, and paradoxically, that's a much more effective way to control people. This leads to what Han calls auto-exploitation. That empowering message of you can very quickly gets internalized as a crushing demand of you must. We absorb all this pressure to constantly optimize, to produce more, to achieve without any limits. And so we become both the master demanding more and the slave struggling to keep up, all inside our own heads. And this right here is the ultimate trap. I mean, historically, oppression came from the outside. A king, a boss, a government. You knew who to fight. But in a system of self-exploitation, who do you revolt against? When the voice telling you you're not good enough is your own, there's no one to overthrow. The leopard is inside the cage with you. Now, this internal leopard isn't just a feeling. It has reshaped our entire economic system, and it has real, often brutal consequences. The relentless logic of optimization we apply to ourselves is now being applied by the systems we created, and they're starting to turn on us. Let's just take Amazon. In a single year, the company laid off 30,000 of its corporate and tech employees. Now, these weren't just junior staff. These were the experienced engineers, the managers, the designers who literally built the systems that define Amazon. And this happened while the company was, by most measures, more successful than ever. The official story from CEO Andy Jassy was that the cuts weren't about money. He said it was about culture, about becoming leaner and more innovative. It's a nice story. It's a compelling narrative. It's just not the whole story. If you dig into the company's own numbers, you see something very different. Yeah, revenue and net income looked great, but their free cash flow, the actual cash they had on hand, had completely tanked. Why? Because of a colossal spending spree of over $100 billion, almost all of it on building out their AI infrastructure. So the layoffs weren't really about culture. It was just capital reallocation. It was simple math. The $6 billion they saved in annual salaries was the money they needed for their massive AI push. In a very literal sense, human headcount was converted into compute capacity. You aren't being replaced by a robot that can do your job. You're being replaced by the company's need to buy the GPUs to build that robot. The system of optimization is now consuming its own creators. So, okay, if we're trapped in a system that forces us to feed our own inner predator, what hope is there? Well, the first step isn't to fight. It's just to see the system clearly for what it is, and to start questioning the stories it's been telling us. Former Bank of England Governor Mark Carney brings up the Czech dissident Václav Havel, who had this idea of living within a lie. Havel's famous example was a greengrocer who puts a communist slogan in his window, not because he believes it, but just to signal that he's playing along. The whole system runs on everyone playing along. Carney's point is that we all put up our own signs, and the very first act of freedom is just to take them down. And taking down those signs means being honest about reality. And as the philosopher Emile Cioran argued, nothing shows you reality quite like failure. In our achievement-obsessed society, We treat failure like it's a disease, but Kieran saw it completely differently. Success, he said, is blinding. It can't show you who you really are. But failure? Failure is a perfect mirror. It strips away every illusion and shows you exactly where you are. When you accept that reality, the one you see in failure, it can totally shift what you value. The poet John Milton went through this. After literally working himself blind, he was devastated, thinking his life's purpose was gone. But he came to this profound realization that value isn't just about what you produce. There's meaning in stillness, in limitation, in just bearing witness. As he famously wrote, they also serve who only stand and wait. So this is the leopard's evolution. It started as a predator of flesh and blood on the savannah. Then it evolved into the threat of other people, the community that might consume you. And today, its final form is the most dangerous of all, an internal predator that we build ourselves, a voice in our own head that we feed with our ambition, a beast we can never seem to outrun. Which leaves us with a final, really provocative thought. Perhaps the goal isn't to kill the leopard or to escape it. Perhaps the goal is simply to stop running, to stop feeding the machine of self-exploitation. Because when the system you helped build turns to consume you, and all the stories you told yourself fall apart, the only question left is, what do you see when you finally turn around?